evening to you. 4 minutes past 11 is the time. You're listening to Henry Riley here on LBC. After midnight, this hour though, we're talking bad bosses. Michelle Obama said. She said, that's what I want young people to understand, that every experience, the bad boss, the boring assistant job, the job you thought that you weren't appreciated, the one that didn't give you the assignment when you wanted it, all of that is learning to be resilient. One thing that's important is to learn how to do something you don't like and to be good at it. She went on to say, I think a lot of young people want to do what they want to do or what they're good at, but you've got to earn that. Carry some bags, and having some tough times and having people treat you unfairly, not giving you the raise when you think you deserve it. There's character building that gets you ready down the line before being your own manager, being your own leader. I think Michelle Obama is correct. Do you? 0345 6060 973. Denise Taylor is a career coach, a psychologist, and author of How to Get a Job in a Recession and ThriveSpan. I think she's quite right saying that you have to be maybe not a sort of gopher or a flunky, but do you have to do jobs, Denise, that you disagree with early to get on ahead?
I mean, I think those of us who have been working for some time, we all remember the most awful jobs that we have to do when you seem to spend all day long photocopying or going off and doing shopping and collecting the dry cleaning. These are the things that you have to do because it enables you to learn some beginning life skills at work. But what we're finding nowadays is people want to skip that step and move on to the interesting stuff. But you have to demonstrate you can actually just be there and be reliable before you get the interesting stuff.
And is that a Gen Z problem? Because that's how it's being portrayed.
Yeah, and I understand that because I think, I'm Generation Jones, and I think when we think about older people, we had to deal with COVID, but in a different way. But with Gen Z, it affected their education, at school, and they missed out on the early jobs and they were working from home and things. So I think we have those things that we need to think about, that they haven't had a typical entry into the workplace. But, a few years have gone by now. So I think there's things that they can do, there's things that organisations can do to make it easier for them, to give them proper mentoring and support. But I think sometimes, in years gone by, somebody would pull you up and say, you can't do that, you need to do this. Whereas I think everybody's quite hesitant about giving stronger feedback nowadays because they're not quite sure how it's going to be taken on or the impact it might have.
If we sort of look at the words from Michelle Obama, she says the every experiences, the bad boss, the boring assistant job, the job where you thought you weren't appreciated, that will resonate with most people listening to this who for a temporary time, and of course you don't want to spend your whole life photocopying necessarily, as you say, but you do that because you've got your foot in the door and you can, as crazy as it sounds, impress in those roles and in some ways ingratiate yourself.
Exactly, and I think lots of us can remember examples of when we did just that. We showed we could do a boring job with good grace, and then they gave us something better to do. And I don't understand why that message isn't getting through to younger people. Clearly it is with some of them, and clearly there's a lot of young people who want nothing more than a work and will do anything possible. But there are a percentage of people who do feel that work is beneath them. But it's not just now. I remember working with people like that 15 and 20 years ago who wouldn't do X and Y and Z. And I'd say, and I'm thinking, well, I'm your boss times 3, I'll do it, but I'll remember.
Yeah, no, quite. What makes, in your experience as a career coach, what makes a good boss?
Well, a good boss is somebody who brings out the best but will challenge. So you want a boss that gives you clear instructions about what it is that you need to do and gives you feedback about how it's gone. And if it's the first time you've done something, they give you sufficient guidance or tell you who to talk to so that you know what it is that you need to do. And I always remember when I was doing more career coaching and saying to people when they start a new job, nobody's going to mind if you ask, what is it I need to do when you first start? They will mind if it's 3 months later that you start asking.
Yeah, well, that's a very fair point. And if we do the flip side of this, and obviously it's what there's a difference between having a disinterested boss, I would argue, who, let's be honest, if you're running a big company, or even if you're not, you're focusing on your everyday tasks, and in fairness to them, you haven't always got time to check that the new person who's doing the photocopying is necessarily content. But leaving that to one side, what makes a bad boss?
Well, they're the toxic ones, aren't they? They're the ones that are a bully, they harass you, they don't really understand about what modern workplaces are like, and who give you no feedback whatsoever. Because let's imagine we are a boss and we're completely overwhelmed ourselves because we've got so much going on. So we haven't got the time for a new starter. But somebody within that team can. So it's about, I can't do it, but I know somebody who can. And I don't understand why that isn't done more. Having a mentor. And I think that goes down really well. And, sometimes people are finding mentors outside of their workplace, but within an organisation. And I think maybe this is something that younger people need to do, is to find somebody that they can confide in. Maybe you just sort of like, the step above them, and say, is it really like this? How did you handle it? Because if you've never done it before, you don't appreciate that that's how the world is. And I was using photocopying. I'm not sure anybody photocopies anymore, but the boring stuff. But it's like, really? Have I got to go and do all that database stuff? Can't AI do it for me now? And just get some feedback from other people and have them supporting you and helping you to develop more. But sometimes we have to step out and ask them rather than just wait, because otherwise we're a bit like in the chorus line, hoping that we're going to get discovered. We've got to be a bit proactive, and if we need support, ask for it, but not ask it in a sort of whiny way, why won't you help me?
Yes.
Ask for it much more in a, I want to be better at this. Can somebody show me how I need to do it so that I'll know for next time? Well, that's hard. Yeah, it's hard, isn't it?
It is hard. And look, from my experience working in the media, which is a peculiar business at the best of times, but you do have to show willing, because there are so many people who want to be X, Y, or Z, and whether you are staying, and look, unfortunately, this is a reality, I would say to people, whether you're staying half an hour after your shift ends or an hour after your shift ends, whether you really couldn't be bothered, by the way, you don't have to have alcohol, but whether you couldn't be bothered to go out for drinks, and, but everyone from the team is, it's those sorts of things of going the extra mile that do help. And again, this is where perhaps the inequality starts. I'm very fortunate in that my family lives sort of on the outskirts of London, and it does mean that you can, not that London's the only place for media, but not that, you can offer yourself up in some cases for free in the hope that that gets remunerated sort of further down the line. Work experience and the like. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's a whole nother thing, isn't it? About how do you get work experience if you haven't got family to support you? And that is leading to so much inequality, because, God, these are sort of like typical generalised examples, but if you're a working class person living in the north of England and you want to come and work in London, then how on earth are you going to do it unless somebody's going to pay you for it? I mean, there are options of doing it remotely, and there are looking about, well, okay, but there's other cities closer to home that I might be able to do it, but it does seem most unfair that if you've got more support from your family or, private income or whatever, that you can have more opportunities, and then you're ahead of the rest of us, basically.
Yeah. We spoke a lot recently in the sort of, just generally after this report came out from Alan Milburn about NEETs, those not in education, employment or training. It's a strange term, but just to remind people, that is sort of 16 to 24-year-olds who are struggling to find work. It's topped 1 million. Particularly in your line of work, what is your advice to younger people who do, sort of contrasting that with our subject, say, well, do you know what, I've gone and got myself a master's degree or and an undergraduate degree or just an undergraduate degree, and I don't want to be spending my first year photocopying. I've spent all this money on education, I want to be able to do a job that I'm qualified for.
I know, but this isn't new. I mean, I was working in the recession, in 2008, and people were struggling to get work back then. Your degree is just putting you on the same level as everybody else. What I always have cautioned people about all through my career as a careers coach is, don't go and give you a master's degree because you don't know what to do, because that's often not going to help you. In a way, it just puts people off you, because it's like, well, why did you go and do that if you don't know the reason why? So I think I think, first of all, not everybody needs degrees. Is it going to benefit me, or would I be better off going straight into the workplace? And of course it would be good if you could get an apprenticeship, but they're hard. They are just as hard to get an apprenticeship, a degree level apprenticeship in particular, but all apprenticeships are hard going. So if you can't do that, then it always used to be where you go and work in, hospitality or retail at an entry level job. And as we know, it's much more expensive for employers now to take on younger people, because the differential between, what they're paying somebody of 18 and what they're paying somebody of, who's been working it for years has narrowed now. So I don't think that's been helping. But you can't do what you've always done. And I LinkedIn people are saying, at all different ages, I've applied for 1,000 jobs, 500 jobs, and I've never even got an interview, and I've stopped replying to them now. But it's a case of but clearly it's not working, because if whatever you're doing is not working, you need to try something different. And it's like, well, who do you know? And who can you go and speak with? And can somebody give you a day's work experience down the road from you, so you've got something more interesting to talk about? Yeah. And, if you want to be a games designer, for example, well, what is it that you can learn from home that will enable you to design a game, so you've got something tangible that you can go and talk about with an employer? There's lots of things that people can do if they're proactive, but sometimes if you've had a lot of knockbacks and your resilience is feeling a bit shot, then these ideas are not coming to you, and you might not be with people that are going to encourage you and help you to think a bit wider. So then you're just sort of doing more of the same and getting more and more down. And then it's really hard to go and apply for a job if you're not feeling 100%.
Lastly, Denise, talk to me about ThriveSpan.
Yes, well, I got my doctorate at 64, researching how people find meaning in life after full-time work. And I'm really interested in the 60 to 80-year-olds phase of life, because it's not just carry on working, just carry on as if you're still 50. It's a different time. So it's the way the book was put together was to enable for people to think deeper about, but who am I now, and how do I want to go into the next phase of my life? And it may well be you want to carry on working, but in a different way. Or it may be there's something different and you need to take a bit of time to take stock, really think about what's important to you. And the subtitle is Walking Gently into What Matters Now, and it's a gentle way to help you think about moving into later life, because 60 to 80 should be those golden years. Hopefully you've still got your health, you've paid off the mortgage, the kids are no longer demanding what they did before. So what is it that you want to do? And don't waste those years, because otherwise people end up working until their health goes, and then they can't do all these things that they thought they were going to be able to do. So that's why I wrote ThriveSpan.
Thank you very much for your time. That's Denise Taylor, the career coach, psychologist and author of How to Get a Job in a Recession, and the most recent book, ThriveSpan. Coming to your calls in a moment. Do you think Michelle